Hello again people, and today we will talk about a game from the distant past, a cult classic, a game from my childhood. Across this game's long history, I have taken note that the majority of conversation surrounding it is of the wacky and zany variety. While this game is clearly a cartoony, lighthearted god sim, I wanted to give you all a look into the way that I see this game. While yes, you can see this game as just something fun to play from time to time, I wanted to make a video dedicated to showing just how intelligent this game is. Maxis had taken very complicated concepts such as evolution, socialization, civil engineering, bioengineering, and broken them down into their most simplest of parts so they can be understood by all. This game is a fantastic representation of where we have been and where we are going. And in this single playthrough, we will examine every part of it. Every stage will be analyzed, from gameplay to mechanics, and along the way, we will follow the heart-pounding, gut-wrenching tale of the Nocta Accipiter. We'll just call them Nighthawk for simplicity's sake. Today, we will take this incredibly silly game seriously, to see if it has stood the test of time, and it still deserves the praise we give it. I am pleased to present the ultimate analysis of Spore. With a name like Spore, you would be forgiven if you believed this game was about mushrooms. A spore is a minute, typically one-celled, reproductive unit capable of giving rise to a new individual, associated with fungi and protozoans. That's what we are, a protozoa. Protozoa translates to first animal. They are regarded as one-celled animals because they are some of the smallest creatures that exhibit animal-like behavior, such as predation and independent movement. The simplicity of the protozoa complements the simplicity of the cell stage perfectly. The initial stage of Spore is kept simple. The movement controls are easy to understand because you only have to worry about movement in 4 directions. This simplicity also allows a new player to accustom themselves to the creative elements of the game. The cell creator is elementary, both in its control and its complexity. You may control how large your cell is, what parts they have, and little else. The parts you can use in the cell stage fall under 3 different categories: diet, movement, and predation. Diet concerns the mouth of your cell, and the use of your mouth will determine the overall food source you will need. Diet is everything to a surviving organism. It determines what nutrients are absorbed into the body, it determines behavioral patterns, and it also determines the location of the animal upon the food chain. Notoriously, carnivores are more aggressive, as the animals that eat are the ones that are willing to kill. This makes aggression more likely in carnivores. Herbivores are naturally the inverse. Food can be ingested as soon as it's found, so for creatures that eat plants, mobility and defense are a priority. Omnivores can eat both, allowing them to benefit from both food sources. There are many reasons why mammals became the dominant species on Earth. Their omnivorism is one of them. You may notice while I praise this stage for its simplicity, the entire process of evolution throughout Spore is oversimplified, almost to the point of insult. Based on the tone of this game, we can tell it was not made for the sake of realism. This game is not a scientific tool, but rather an introduction to biology. A primer, easily digestible by everyone. To make a game that properly captures the sheer scope and scale of cellular biology and evolution, to then do the same across an entire species from biological evolution to technological advancement would be a daunting task. Also, the final product would require an intense conceptual knowledge from the player. Not everyone has a profound understanding of evolution, and how it can affect behavioral patterns. Your mouth determines your diet, and your food choice determines your playstyle. While meat chunks can be found, the fastest way to obtain carnivorous food is straight from the source. Plant matter is more plentiful, but despite this, you will need to be fast to get it, or at least be fast enough not to become someone else's food. Omnivorous mouths are intriguing as the cell can use it to peacefully eat plants or take on a parasitic role by sucking the very life out of another cell. Cells are always looking for food. Food is energy, energy allows movement, movement allows you to get food, and so on. The three parts which enhance movement throughout the cell stage are flagella, cilia, and jets. When we talk about something swimming through water, the context changes significantly when regarding the microcosmos. Moving through water is easy for us because of our size, but the viscosity of water makes moving an insurmountable task for smaller creatures. Viscosity is the measurement of a liquid's ability to resist deformation. Honey is a liquid, but its incredible viscosity makes it sticky and hard to navigate. That's why honey has a shelf life of about 3,000 years. Microorganisms can grow on top of honey, but they can't move through it without dying. In the micro world, water might as well be as viscous as honey, and despite this, cells still manage to move themselves. Each movement cell part is based on a movement strategy incorporated by real protozoa. The flagella is incorporated by the flagellates. Named for the appendage, these organisms are known to have one or many flagella used for locomotion and sensation. These appendages are the most basic movement part. You always start with one or two of these parts. Having two doesn't increase your speed compared to one, but three will give you the same amount of speed as four. Making yourself fast to outrun any predator is a viable strategy, but will give you zero defense against a predator should it catch you. Speed is also worthless without control, which leads us to our next part. Cilia is based on the cilia used by ciliates. You'll probably notice a pattern here, but don't get used to it. Cilia are tiny hair-like appendages that also provide movement with the added benefit of more control. This is how cilia are represented in-game. I do not know for sure if this is the case IRL, especially considering the cilia in-game is much larger than they normally would be. This added control is beneficial whether you are predator or prey. If control is not something you care for, then the jet is what you need. The jet is based on the mobility strategy of the amoeba. They suck in water and then expel it to propel themselves forward, allowing for twice the speed of the flagella as you are pushing the substrate through you rather than pushing yourself through the substrate. The overall effectiveness of a protozoa is directly correlated by their ability to thrive in their respective niche. What makes your cell and spore so powerful and the game so fun is the fact that you can equip your cell with all these parts at once. There is such a primal satisfaction with creating the perfect creature with the best qualities of all the animals on Earth. This creative combination crafting will continue in the creature stage. Predation is the process in which one animal hunts another animal for the purpose of eating them. On the cellular level, predation can happen just by two cells bumping into each other. This is why most of the predation cell parts are proximity-based. Our weapon options are the spike, the poison, and the electric. Simply, but accurately named. The spike is a simple, long protruding auxiliary which damages any cell unfortunate enough to touch its pointed tip. The spike is simple yet versatile, as it can be used for both attack and defense. Placing them up front will let you use them to kill prey or competition. Placing them on your stern will give you much needed protection from a rival cell that chases after you. The poison releases a toxic cloud of gas which then causes damage to other cells that move into it. It also stuns them for a duration. Thankfully, you are immune to your own gas as well as other toxic gas clouds from your own species of cell. Much like plants we eat or the spices we harvest to keep our food from growing bacteria, toxins are naturally occurring. Toxins are all around us, either in inert forms or active forms. Typically, you wouldn't expect a creature so simple to be able to incorporate a strategy of releasing toxins. But evolution can change everything. In 2010, there was a form of bacteria discovered called GFAJ-1, which could eat arsenic, a well-known poisonous element. So with this, it's clear that what is toxic to one organism is not the same to others. A great strategy incorporating the poison is to attach a cilia to your cell, and whenever you are in danger, quickly thrash about engulfing the surrounding area in a poisonous gas cloud. The final and arguably the weakest of predatory parts is the electric. Whenever a rival cell draws near, the electric will activate, shocking it for a duration. These are all the official cell parts. There are actually several more, but they are just different skins of the same parts with the same functions. I have referenced the cell stage many times as being simple. While it is, the actual process of what is happening here is more complex than most people could even imagine. Changes in cell structure, design, and size all happen over the course of billions of years. This is evolution. The cumulative inherited change in a population of organisms through time. As a species lives, it exhibits behavioral patterns and physical characteristics that allow it to survive. Almost every characteristic about an animal allows it to continue living. These characteristics can change over time, either becoming more efficient or effective. For example, at one point, in theory, there was a time when no living organisms could move. Living things existed, but they depended on the chemicals and food they needed to come right to them. Not a very efficient survival strategy at all. The first organism to become mobile would be the first organism to be able to get food whenever it was needed. The cells which could not move eventually died off and did not reproduce. The cells which could move did get the food and in turn did reproduce, and as a result, every cell from that point could move. This is the theory of evolution, and we see abounding examples of this in the natural world. This phenomena is represented in the progression of the game and actions from the player. As you eat, your cell grows and evolves over the course of billions of years. At the beginning of the game, your only opponents are tiny minnow cells which offer no competition at all. After you grow, you start to see cells with both offensive and defensive characteristics. As you continue to grow, you start to see more complex and increasingly dangerous cells. It is possible to complete the cell stage without adding any more parts, but I would advise against it. There are various strategies you can incorporate that will allow you to meet these challenges, and this is where Spore truly shines. You are being met with a challenge, all of these deadly cells, whether it's a cell that's faster than you or larger and more scary than you. Using your expert gamer skills, you are making the strategic decision to give your cell characteristics which allow you to better survive in the game. You are evolving your cell. The reason why billions of years have passed when you've only been playing for 30 minutes is because the game is simply skipping the trial and error phase. Despite these time jumps, we still see depictions of evolution at play in-game. Speciation and complexity are the most notable. Speciation is the formation of new and distinct species in the course of evolution. A certain group of a species can begin to exhibit different characteristics either because it is more successful or possesses less competition. Over time, this group can become an entirely new species. We see this represented in the shyster and the spiked shyster. The shyster is an herbivore, so its body is barren of anything but flagella. The spiked shyster is carnivorous and requires more offensive traits to be more successful. The shyster's filter mouth has altered into a row of spikes to allow it to hunt its prey. We see this divergence many times throughout the cell stage. Whether comparing a pinky to a punky or a stabber to a stabella, we see changes in diet, but also changes in body structure to account for its diet. As we progress further into the cell stage, we see examples of behavior being driven by evolution. Take the jetster, for example. This cell is an herbivore with no defensive parts at all. It does have 7 jets on its body. This evolutionary product allows the jetster to speed away at an incredible pace, which is beneficial for an herbivore who needs to get away from predators. The megamouth is the opposite, very slow, moving at 1/5 the speed of a jetster. It is a true carnivore with 5 mouths and a massive physique. The appearance of these cells are representative of how they fill their niche within the tide pool. Out of all the stages within this game, the cell stage is the most shallow. No, that's not a pun, it's just me being honest. This stage is not the selling point of the game, as you can complete it within as little as 8 minutes. This whole section is more like a small tutorial to ease people into the concept of Spore, rather than a full level which details the cellular evolution of your species. This stage is later supplemented by the open and freeing nature of the creature stage. I am not here to harp on the game, but as advertised, I will analyze this stage and criticize it for its flaws. For starters, the way in which you unlock cell parts needs an amendment. The way you obtain new cell parts is either through randomly finding a meteor or looting it from a fallen cell who had that part. On paper, this idea makes sense, but for the sake of balance, this system could put the player in a very sticky situation. For starters, some of the cells which use the unlockable parts are more deadly than you, and can easily kill you if you're not careful. Obviously, this is where the challenge comes in, but the challenge in question might not be possible due to the player's input as much as player luck. Take the booster for instance. If you try to kill the booster to obtain its part, it will simply boost away from you, and you are forced to chase it, unable to match its speed. Your only hope in killing one is seemingly to catch one on a piece of debris or another cell. This challenge is based on luck rather than player action. If you were to play the game as intended, you may collect so much DNA that you grow before you get a chance to kill the booster, which makes getting the part impossible. This criticism really only highlights a larger underlying flaw in the structure of the cell stage. That being, you cannot choose when to advance. The game does it automatically for you. Whenever you eat food and gain a predetermined amount of DNA, your cell grows, and the cells at your previous level become unavailable to you. This makes certain cell parts easily missable. Ultimately, this flaw doesn't affect the game entirely, but it can be a problem if you're going for a specific part. Cell stage is also plagued with a level of repetitiveness, as you see the same cells in every playthrough. Issues that plague a short section of the game and ultimately do not bring the game down at the end of the day. I might not do this for every single stage, but I wanted to take the time to briefly analyze the music within Spore. Atmosphere and theme are important things to pin down in any art medium, and music is the backbone of a game's atmosphere. Music can set tone, set the pace, keep you engaged, or even be something to admire all by itself. Spore is no exception, as it has one of the most interesting and identifiable soundtracks I have ever heard. I called this the ultimate Spore analysis, so I would be doing a disservice to the game if we didn't talk about this amazing soundtrack. This part of the video is best experienced with headphones. Primordial Soup for Dinner is one of the first songs you hear when you start the cell stage. Upon first listen, you may find it hard to conceive a consistent thought. This track is sporadic, no pun intended. The secret behind this track's weird, nonsensical sound is the fact that it's actually two songs in one. In your right ear, you will hear a scale increasing and then decreasing. In your left ear, you will hear notes being played at twice the tempo as the right. This imbalance is more than likely made to invoke a feeling of irregularity within the cell universe. When you are a cell, you have to be constantly in motion for multiple reasons, and the song captures that feeling of skittishness perfectly. I believe the main instrument being used here is a marimba, a cousin of the xylophone. The music changes as your cell grows larger and larger, becoming more complex to match the complexity of your cell. Change is a universal constant, both in life and in Spore. The commencement of the creature stage begins a trend where the game changes on a fundamental level. The cell stage was a 2.5D swim scroller. The creature stage is now a 3D open world. Tribal is an RTS. The civilization stage is a combination of real-time strategy games with a hint of city building. The space stage is, well, the space stage. Forgive my vagueness, but I don't think the space stage has a specific style of game it's based on. It's just a pure god simulator. Regardless, the change is very apparent. This aspect of Spore is one of the reasons why people never complete the game. I've seen streamers flat out quit the game when they reach the tribal stage because of this change. The question is whether or not this is the fault of the game. Imagine for a moment you were playing a first-person shooter and all of a sudden the game turned into a rhythm game where you had to play music to win. Sudden change in genre could be a fun way to add a change of pace in some cases, but how much is too much? When someone purchases a game, they have a general idea of what the genre is and what the game entails based on advertising and reviews. They rarely understand the entire game simply because they haven't played it. When you buy a game, there's an unspoken agreement between you and the game. The game gives the player a specific type of content they enjoy. However, if the game were to deviate from that content, this can and has thrown players off of their enjoyment of the game. It is fair to fault a game for shifting from a 3D open world to an RTS. While I am not implying that Spore conducted a malicious bait and switch, I will say that I understand when people quit playing the game because they hate the tribal stage or even the creature stage. We will talk about this concept more so in the tribal stage because this is where the issue is most notable. Ultimately, this would be better described as a byproduct of the overall simplification of the many topics which Spore tackles. I personally am a fan of the game despite this. If I had to gauge the quality of each stage, the list would read Space being the best, followed by Creature, Civ, Tribal, then Cell. At the end of the day, the choice of what stage you enjoy most is based on preference of genre. I am sure those who love RTS games appreciate the tribal stage more than most. Now that that's out of the way, let's get into the creature stage. Every creature stage begins with making landfall. Your creature and other members of its species race to the surface with lungs and legs. The jump in evolution with no clear connection is jarring for those who know more than usual about evolution. Like everything, legs were formed after a long process of trial and error. The reasoning for this gap in evolution is the fact that there were many stages planned for Spore that are not present in the final release. An aquatic stage was one of them. This stage would follow the cell stage, and it would allow the player to swim in a 3D environment as a fish-like species. At one point, there was a massive fan project that was dedicated to recreating this stage, and from what I can tell, they got pretty far. Unfortunately, as far as I'm aware, the mod has been discontinued. The disconnect is jarring, but understandable. The creature stage contains both good and bad representations of animal life, which we will reference as they come up. Every creature in Spore is oviparous, meaning they lay eggs after reproducing to increase their numbers. This was more than likely done to maintain the ESRB rating, as live births can be traumatic for some countries. Also, it's difficult to represent live births in the art style that Spore was going for. Kinda funny to think about considering this is a game where you can commit massive galactic genocide, but I digress. Every creature in the creature stage uses a nest as a small home base where you can automatically heal. While in the creature and tribal stage, food is required to keep your species in good health. Based on your decisions in the cell stage, your food options are limited. Herbivores can only eat food off of trees and bushes. Carnivores can eat other creatures after they have been defeated. Omnivores can benefit from both. Your decisions build off each other in what is known as the consequence system. We will go over these abilities as we traverse into new stages. Siren Song allows you to better socialize and ally with other creatures. Summon Flock, the strongest power, which allows you to summon a group of small winged creatures to help you attack or ally other creatures. The Raging Roar causes surrounding creatures to run away in fear, making them easier to attack. The effects of these special abilities falls in line with the diet of your creature. Naturally, the diet of a species directly affects its behavioral habits. Herbivores don't need to kill other animals for food, so they are naturally more passive and friendly. Carnivorous animals are naturally the inverse, not out of malice, but necessity. The meat-eating animals that made friends with their food did not eat. Spore's consequence system on the surface is a gameplay mechanic to encourage different styles of play. At the same time, it accurately captures how evolution has a profound effect on more than just physical traits. Evolution can also instill behavioral patterns, temperament, and overall culture further down the line. Culture is something we will cover in the tribal stage, but for now, let's talk about the many different animal behaviors that are represented within the creature stage. Over the course of the creature stage, you are made to complete tasks in which you ally a creature species or hunt them. Either of these behaviors are divided into 4 different abilities. When allying another species, you are socializing with them to convince them to like you. The 4 socializing abilities are singing, posing, charming, and dancing, each with a level of effectiveness based on the level of the parts. Offensive abilities are one of 4 attacks: biting, charging, striking, and spitting. Ew. New creature parts are acquired through 3 different methods. Bone piles of various sizes are strewn throughout the game world. Destroying these will give you a part. Allying or killing an alpha creature marked by a yellow star will also give you a part. I never noticed this until recently, but the order in which you acquire parts is not random. The ability parts you get are tied to the ones which are already equipped to your creature. For example, if you have the beak mouth, you are more than likely to be rewarded with another stronger beak mouth when obtaining new parts. This system of weighted drops is actually really genius because it accomplishes 2 things. First, it allows the player to continue playing the way they want throughout the game. They don't have to worry about RNG when obtaining new parts, because they are more likely to get an upgrade for parts that have the abilities they want. Simultaneously, it makes the overall progression of the creature more realistic, as parts grow in complexity based on the level. For example, this is a level 1 charge part, and this is a level 5 charge part. As you equip stronger parts onto your creature, it is easily observed how the species has evolved. There are also 4 generic abilities which help with both offensive and defensive scenarios, focusing on movement: jump, sprint, glide, and sneak. Spore was a pioneer of procedural generation. I'm not sure if it's the art style or the dispersion of objects or even the designs of the objects, but every planet looks different. Spore has a set supply of everything from plants, pre-made creatures, terrain features, water, and planets to take from to form your galaxy. By creating creatures and such, you are adding to this pool and might just see a copy of your own creation. And back when the Spore servers were still up, other people could upload their creations and you could download them into your game. This collective creative ecosystem made the game almost infinitely replayable and virtually future-proof. Seeing your own creature in the game fighting against you would be jarring at first, but it would be a perfect example of divergent evolution. Evolution is not a straight line, as you may have seen in some diagrams. Humans and monkeys are closely related, but we are not the same species and therefore cannot evolve from them. Monkeys are primates like us, but we are two different outcomes of evolution. Orangutans evolved from a species which is now extinct, just like we evolved from the Homo habilis, which is also now extinct. Animals that go extinct obviously do not pass on their genes, so those that survive adapt in whichever ways they can. Homo neanderthalensis is the most well-known example of a human species which ended up going extinct. The running theory of why they went extinct is due to climate change, funnily enough. They were more suited for a cold environment, and when the Earth warmed up, they could not survive. There is no coincidence that the environment has a profound effect on which animals are successful. The environment is constantly changing, despite what some people think, and the number one determining factor of survival is one's ability to adapt to said environment. Sudden change in environment is what could lead to animal migration. This is represented in-game as you migrate after every evolution milestone, and the end location is seemingly random. The final migration is the most important, as it determines the final location of your tribe and then your first city, which can sometimes be in a less than ideal spot. I would classify this as one of the bigger flaws of the game. For being a game dedicated to creating your own species from the ground up, it seems like a strange decision to not allow you to choose where to migrate. This is rare, but it is possible to be put into a final migration spot, which will make your tribal and civilization stage more difficult for no good reason. The act of migration can even inconvenience the player, as sometimes it might require you to travel through a location that is not safe. And don't even get me started on the possibility that your new nest is placed next to an epic spawn. It's rare, but it can happen. Your mission throughout the creature stage is to either make friends with other animals or hunt other animals to extinction. The actual gameplay of the creature stage appears to be more on the extreme side of things. I have already stated that this is not a game that is trying to emulate reality or give a science lesson. I just wanted to briefly reference that it's very rare for one animal species to hunt another into extinction. Unless you're a human. The worst part about that is it's not even a joke. One of the deciding factors which contributes to the overall intelligence of a species is its ability to cooperate. 2 is greater than 1, and even though most animals don't understand math, they still follow this pattern of strength in numbers. Prey animals sometimes group together to form a barrier of their own bodies to protect the group from predators. Predator animals can hunt in packs, although it does depend on the species. Pack hunting is not super common. In fact, roughly 80% of all carnivorous animals hunt by themselves. This is not a constant throughout the natural world, but it is a constant throughout Spore, or at least it's an optional constant. Every evolution milestone will net you one single pack slot where you can use your socialize abilities to add a creature to your hunting pack. This could be a member of your own species or another species that you have already allied. Spore, overall, is a pretty chill game. Even on hard difficulties, the game doesn't take a sizable amount of skill to complete. The difficulty affects things like your overall health and how many creatures are hostile towards you. Pressing backspace will make your creature let out a mating call, which will then allow you to enter the creature creator. The creature creator is the backbone of Spore, as this is where almost all of the creative content comes from. There are other creators, but for the most part, the creature creator is the one that people most care about. Within, you can edit every aspect of your creature, from the number of vertebrae to the number of limbs. If you can think it, you can make it. Make sure you like the way your creature looks before you enter the tribal stage, because if your species discovers fire, it's all over. They're locked in. This has proved to always be a drawback of the game. I mean, why wouldn't you be able to further edit yourself in the space stage? You have the technology. Why not just use the creature tweaker on yourself? Either way, I won't be going over every single creature part individually as I did for the cell stage, simply because it would get repetitive and redundant. We will talk about the creature parts in regards to their category: mouth, senses, limbs, feet, hands, details, and weapons. Starting with the mouth, there are 40 mouth parts total. You don't have access to all of them in a regular game. Based on your actions in the cell stage, some of the mouth parts will be permanently locked. Omnivores have the most options when picking a mouth. Think of the orientation of how parts are divided as a spectrum, or even a representation of the food chain. The bottom, herbivore mouths, are more social oriented as they give better singing skill as you move down. The omnivore mouths blend but never become too powerful. Carnivorous mouths will give you more bite damage on average. With the combination of physical traits coinciding with the actual stats, it is much easier to get a gentle herbivore and an aggressive and deadly carnivore. Here are examples of a creature being made 3 different times with 3 different styles of parts. Here's a detail I bet you didn't know. You can scale any part to be bigger or smaller with the mouse wheel, but the size of your creature's mouth determines the pitch of their voice. The larger the mouth of your creature, the deeper the voice. Unfortunately, this doesn't continue throughout the other stages. Sensory organs consist of ears, eyes, nose, and antenna. Here's another cool detail I bet you never knew. If you don't put eyes on your creature, your vision is severely limited to the area around you because you can't see. However, if you have no eyes but put some antenna on your creature, your vision is still limited, but the range improves slightly to account for the extra awareness the antenna give you. The nose works the same way, but unfortunately they are not multiplicative. You don't get more vision for having a nose combined with an antenna. I always thought it would have been cool if you didn't have any ears on your creature, then it would muffle the sound, but I could easily envision the reason why they didn't do that is because it was a big problem in beta testing. Purely conjecture, I don't know if this is actually the case, but I could easily imagine them deciding against using this, because a bunch of beta testers kept complaining about the lack of sound and never figured out that they had to put ears on their creature. Limbs come in all shapes and sizes. Some are muscular, some stringy, some legs have their joints backwards. The aesthetics of the legs are only enhanced by this game's procedural animations. The procedural animations this game incorporates allow you to put a mouth anywhere and the creature will eat using that mouth. No matter where you put the arms, they will act accordingly to where they are placed. The hands and feet are where the stats come in. Hands allow you to pick things up and use basic tools. If you reach the tribal stage without getting any arms or hands, your species will just use its mouth, which is hilarious. Hands give you certain stats associated with the animal that part is based on. The webbed, non-threatening amphibious hand gives you the strongest pose in the game, while the hands with the super sharp claws give you the strongest strike attack in the game. If any part appears to have some sort of armor plating, then it will also give you a boost to your health. Feet parts increase general movement speed, and certain ones give you more jump height, sneak skill, and sprint duration. They also give you better dancing and charge depending on what part you pick. Details increases everything else, giving you bonuses to other stats. Details are the finishing touches, the ornaments you place on your creature to solidify its final design. Plant-like parts improve your sneak as they help you blend into the foliage. Pretty flowers and shiny rock formations let you look more charming. Bony plates give you more armor and increase health. Aerodynamic flaps increase sprint duration, and wings help you fly. And finally, everything is tied together with the 3-layer coloring system to finalize your creature. You can choose from 36 prefab color schemes or combine 3 different ones, giving you over 40,000 combinations to choose from. This creator is truly the centerpiece of this game. On top of all these parts, you can scale the parts up and down, and alter them using arrows to make some features even more pronounced. The creature creator might as well be its own proprietary piece of editing software, as it also has hotkeys to make your creativity flow much faster. Holding Alt and clicking will allow you to copy a part. Holding Control will let you attach arms for some weird 3- and 4-armed action. Holding Shift Alt will let you copy just one segment of an arm for some stubby arms. Once you have unlocked your parts and decide how to incorporate them into your creature, now it's time to use these parts to either socialize or kill any other creatures that share this planet with you. While it's not common for animals of different species to befriend each other in the wild, it can happen. This premise is called symbiosis. Two animals form a mutually exclusive relationship where they both benefit. While not as complex as the way humans socialize, these relationships are effective survival strategies. Again, cooperation is key. The 4 socialization skills in the game are sing, dance, pose, and charm, each with a varying level of effectiveness. Ranging from 1 to 5, each value will increase the social bar when you try to befriend another species. The other creature always gets the first turn. The creature will choose one of the abilities it currently has. A bar will appear and fill up after the creature chooses its opening ability. It is now your job to replicate the ability to fill the bar. If you choose the wrong ability, it will still fill up, just at a very slower rate. The other creature will never fill the bar past the midpoint, so you have to meet them right in the middle, or exceed the middle. At level 1, if the creature uses a level 1 ability, the bar will fill 1 level, and yours will act the same. Alphas are stronger, and the star level determines how stronger it is based on the level of the ability used. Just assume that each level of ability is represented by the level it is. Sing level 1 has a power level of 1, Sing 2 is power level 2, etc. When you get to a point where you can add more creatures to your pack, the effects of the abilities are additive. So if you are going up against a creature with a Sing level of 1, your Sing level 1 by itself will fill 1 bar, but if you have a buddy with you, your Sing will fill up 2 bars, because it has a power strength of 2 now. The socialization mechanic can be a little bit difficult to understand if you're just playing Spore for the first time, so I will briefly explain how it works. A lot of the challenge of socializing other creatures can just be circumvented by making sure you have the strongest social abilities whenever possible. If you're ever having trouble socializing a specific species, click on it and then it will immediately be added to your Sporepedia. Open up your Sporepedia by clicking on the boxes in the bottom left-hand corner. Clicking on the creature you want to socialize will bring up its details. Pay attention to what level their social abilities are. If a creature group is above level 3 or more, they will call other nearby members of their own species to help them. Every turn the targeted creature will give you an invisible number value. You now have to either meet or beat this invisible number. For example, if I try to socialize with these Trigor, they can sing, dance, or pose because those are the only parts they have. It's a level 3 creature as shown by the level inside of the star, so that means they will call 2 other members to help them. The Trigor has a Sing level of 1. If the Trigor uses Sing, then that is a social score of 3. However, if they try to dance, their dance score is 3, so it would be 3 multiplied by 3, which is a social score of 9. In this specific example, I had only 1 pack member with me, and my dance skill was level 4, so that would be 4 times 2, which is 8 social score, which was close to 9 but not quite there yet. I would have to make up the difference someplace else. Next, they decided to pose. They only have a pose level of 1. Luckily, my pose level is 4, which gives me 8 social score. By the time everything was finished, I had slightly exceeded the social score and befriended the Trigor. I hope this explains things. I occasionally see posts where people are confused about how the system works. There is an element of luck to this because your target creature might just be the best dancer in the world and your dance might be weak, even if you have a pack with you. But you could argue that that is a representation of how your interests might differ from another species. There are 5 levels which determine how much a species likes you. Red means they are your sworn enemies and will attack you on sight. Green means they are your allies and you can heal at their nest. If a creature is red, you cannot socialize with them unless you use the Siren Song ability. Otherwise, if the creature is orange level, they will attack you after a duration, but you do have a short amount of time to befriend them before that happens. Animal behavior is rarely predictable because it's driven by instinct, unique to that creature. Increasing the difficulty will increase the number of aggressive creatures you encounter. As long as there is 2 people left on the planet, someone is gonna want someone dead. This is a proverb which speaks to the human race's capacity to destroy and their tendency to kill members of their own race. The fact of the matter is, humanity's capacity to hurt others stems from a time where violence was a necessity. Hunting and gathering was a vital part of early human existence. We foraged for food, sure, but when you can't find food or none grows nearby, you have to hunt it down for yourself. So that's what early humans had to do, otherwise they didn't eat and then they died soon after. You may have met someone in your life who is either super competitive or even manipulative. That's because this behavior is rewarded in a hunter-gatherer setting. The most aggressive and tricky of hunters were more likely to succeed, and unfortunately, this behavior is still rewarded in the modern day. There is no coincidence that toxic people call themselves alphas. Make no mistake, I'm not trying to say that their behavior is correct. The obvious disconnect is sentience. When an organism begins to think, compassion soon follows. They understand that other creatures feel pain, and some take the necessary steps to ensure that they cause as little pain as possible. In a modern setting, predation is not vital for survival, but because it used to be, and because evolution gives you learned traits, we still have these leftover traits. In the context of the creature stage, violence is a necessity for both attack and defense. You have 4 different attacks: bite, charge, strike, and spit. Each deal a different amount of damage depending on the level. Bite is a close-range physical attack that does 1 damage at level 1 and 3 damage at level 5. Charge allows you to close the gap between you and a fleeing creature or ambush an unsuspecting creature by stunning them. Charge does a comparable amount of damage to bite, but you would more likely use it for its stunning effect. Strike is the strongest attack in the creature stage, as it does a whopping 9 damage. Spit is the only ranged attack, and it also has a poison effect which deals increased damage over 6 seconds. The way in which you dispatch a creature is up to you, as strategy is beneficial but not required to succeed. Creatures do have preset behaviors, so if you want, you can simply wait for an open opportunity when one member of the group wanders off, then you can use abilities like Sneak to get a damage boost to your first attack. After a handful of migrations and a lot of evolving, the creature stage comes to a close. Before we wrap up this section and move on to the tribal stage, I will mention a few extra miscellaneous bits. Landmarks are incorporated seamlessly into the procedural generation of your planet. These landmarks could be massive creature fossils, statues telling a story of an ancient alien race, and many more. These sometimes reward your exploration, as large bone piles are more likely to spawn nearby. While exploring the creature stage, you can also find these rogue creatures, which are larger, more powerful creatures which roam around solo, making them easier to befriend. And they give you a whopping 100 DNA if you manage to do so. We also have these massive spice geysers, which you can't do anything with yet, unless you count getting launched high into the air as something. Epic creatures are massive versions of animals that roam around the game world. They always kill you in one hit if they damage you. There is a way to kill one, but it just takes a very long time. Summon Flock is useful, and make sure you have Spit and Strike level 5. Find and befriend other creatures that also have Strike level 5 to maximize the initial damage. All of your allies will die eventually, as the epic has 1000 health. Stand behind it so it has to turn to face you. This will give you a few seconds to run away before it attacks. Don't even bother fighting an epic that has a spit attack, because it will just be able to shoot you at any range. The only way to effectively kill an epic is to kite it around an open area using your spit attack. It's kind of annoying, it's time consuming, but to be honest, these epic creatures are not designed to be killed just yet. But with some patience and some luck, the epic will die eventually. But you won't get anything for killing it, just some bragging points. The environment in which a species inhabits determines so much about it, and it also acts as a non-physical barrier between instinct and sapience. Let me explain. Instinct is a largely inheritable tendency of an organism to respond to environmental stimuli. We have instincts and we succumb to them all the time. Instincts are adjacent to thoughts, but they are not one and the same. Sapience is the ability to apply knowledge or experience to a situation. Most animals act on instinct, impulse. These are naturally learned behaviors, which are, you guessed it, a result of evolution. When a species develops a sapient brain, that brain will begin to process information that it collects. This information can be processed into almost an infinite number of ways. I describe sapience as a non-physical barrier, but I believe it is more accurate to describe it as an ability to create a barrier to protect yourself from the environment. Modern humans pride themselves on their ability to build structures and settlements to allow them shelter from the elements. This is a milestone of evolution, as instead of allowing the adaptations to the environment to happen naturally over the course of millions of years, the species can simply use its acquired knowledge to mold nature itself to fit its own interests. Cut down trees to build a house, gather wood and set it on fire to create your own warmth, gather animal skins and use them as insulation. Intelligence can be measured by how a species can use its knowledge of its environment and twist them to increase its own survivability. This is all leading to the idea that intelligence as we know it is rare. While intelligence can happen as a result of evolution, it is not a requirement for survival. Most animals get along just fine acting on their own instincts, not a thought to be heard of. The true takeaway from this is, you are sapient. Appreciate it because you don't have to be. After spending millions of years running through trees, you will discover fire, and time will skip forward to your species' ascension to sentience. The tribal stage is arguably the least enjoyed stages of Spore. This topic is divisive, as I do see people from time to time say that the tribal stage is their favorite. I will not tell you that you're wrong for liking the tribal stage, but I will explain my position on why I think that the tribal stage itself is a flaw. I will also touch on how the shift in gameplay could have been handled better, and I will also take the time to talk about genre as a whole. We briefly touched on this topic before, but now would be the best time to talk about the matter without reservation, as this is where the biggest issue of Spore lies. Genre, in general, is one of the broadest topics you can ever talk about. It simply means a style of art, music, or literature. There are potentially millions of genre, each sharing overlapping similarities. Rock to classical, first-person shooter to strategy, poems to comic books. Ultimately, it's a way to classify something to better understand it, as by labeling it, you may be able to relate it to something you have already experienced within that genre. Humans do this every day. It's literally how our brains work. Have you ever been talking to a friend and said something like, "Hey, there's this new game coming out, I think you should play it," and then they ask what it's like? Naturally, you start by listing off qualities of the game or relate it to something you know or think your friend has played. "Hey, try this new game called Little Gator Game. It has a touching story about a brother and a sister, kinda like Amori. You like Amori, right? It's a 3D game where you can run around a big island and explore and collect stuff like Animal Crossing. You like Animal Crossing, right? It also has some puzzle solving, like that one game Portal you like, right? You like Portal." You'll notice that I just described 3 different games within 3 different genres, very different from each other. Lil Gator Game has the qualities I just described, but it doesn't fall directly within the genres of games I just gave examples from. Just because you like one of the games I just described, or the qualities I just described, doesn't mean you will also enjoy Lil Gator Game. The reason why you may not like Lil Gator Game is because it may have qualities you like, but not all of the qualities you look for in a game. By the way, you should totally play Lil Gator Game. You can Naruto run in that game. This would be the opportune moment to mention something like preference or taste. Preferences are unique to everyone. They change and morph just like we do. To have a preference is to have an opinion, and like a butt, we all have one. Think of every person like a dartboard, but the bullseye is in a different place depending on who you're talking to. If a piece of media hits close enough to the bullseye or even nails it dead on, there's a good chance that they will like that game. Where am I going with all this? Spore has a genre issue, and the issue echoes throughout every facet of this game. It's only more noticeable here because the change here is the most pronounced. 3D open world with creative creature building, socializing, and 3D real-time combat is now an RTS with resource management and less creativity. These genres are very far apart, and I would argue they speak to very different types of people. It's not impossible to find someone who likes both of these genres, but it is difficult. The creature stage encourages someone who is more creative, and the tribal stage caters to someone more analytical and calculating. The creature stage allows you to change your creature in a million different ways. It also encourages exploration. The tribal stage has you managing several different things at once. This change in genre is and always has been the biggest detriment to the game. The reason why genre exists and the reason why people relate their enjoyment of something to its genre is because that specific genre speaks to them. They enjoy it, they love it, because it gives them what they want, it makes them happy. You cannot tell them any different, it's tied to who they are. So what could Maxis have done differently? Two things. Well, more than two things, but two main things. Number one, the decrease in creative expression of your species is a regression that does not make sense. Just because humans discovered tools, hunting, and fire doesn't mean they stop changing their appearance. In fact, the incorporation of sentience means that they are much more likely to change their appearance. Look at any two humans nowadays, they all look completely different. Sure, give people clothes to dress their villagers with, but also give them other options too. Body modification is something humans have been doing for thousands of years. Jewelry, tattoos, hairstyles are a given, but severely limited compared to the extent they could have been. What about variation? Why does every member of my species look exactly the same? Give us more freedom to determine how our villagers look. And number two, the change in genre should not have been as severe as it was. Instead of a full-on RTS, give us something more like The Sims. Keep the open-world elements. Let us choose a personality for our villagers. Give us control over all those cute little animations that the villagers have. Let the player go back to a 3D environment and walk around their village, talk to their villagers. There was so much lost in the gameplay experience from creature to tribal that it's no wonder why people don't like it. So now that we have talked about what the game could have been, let's go over what the game actually is. In the tribal stage, you give orders to your villagers, still using the social or aggressive verb system. This time around, your actions are tied to weapons and instruments you don't have access to initially. The tribal stage has 9 different buildings, each representative of a different tool. All of these buildings are bought with food, because, sure, why not? Flaming torches, maracas, gathering canes, throwing spears, horns, didgeridoos, fishing spears, healing rods, and stone axes. Carnivores cannot use gathering canes because they don't eat fruit, but funnily enough, herbivores can still fish for seaweed. Weapons help you deal more damage if you are aggressive. Instruments are played to socialize with other tribes. The consequence traits for the tribal stage are increased, and they will continue until the space stage. Most of the space stage traits are discounts and boosted stats. From green to red, the traits are as follows. Refreshing Storm replenishes nearby fruit, giving you more food. Fireworks make neighbors happy and easier to make friends with. Flying Fish summons a large amount of fish, however, this ability can glitch out and the fish sometimes don't show up. Beastmaster entices nearby animals to fight or help you. Traps let you ensnare animals to kill or domesticate them. Firebombs allow you to do a massive AoE of damage around your chieftain to enemies and nearby structures. In true RTS fashion, you have to gather resources and use them to either fight or socialize with other tribes. While the mechanics are almost identical to the creature stage, they are somehow more repetitive. There are only 3 types of instruments and only 3 weapons, making depth hard to come by. The game is constantly moving. While there is a pause button, you could become overwhelmed if you're not familiar with RTS games. It's all about finding the balance between getting tools, feeding your villagers, and eventually deciding how to handle your neighbors. The strategy I usually use is to turtle, meaning you gather as many resources as possible, try to get an animal to get passive food production, buy weapons, and wait for a more aggressive tribe to attack. The computer rarely sends an entire tribe after you, meaning you can always outnumber the raiding party if you select the whole village and attack. After the attack, I immediately either send a gift to make them like me more, or counterattack, while they're weak. Less people in their tribe means they are easier to befriend or kill. Towards the end of the tribal stage, there will be multiple aggressive tribes, so I preemptively send gifts to tribes, leaving one aggressive towards me so I know where the attack is coming from. This one tribe is the one I allow to attack me. I may fault the tribal stage for its leap in genre, but truly, this stage accomplishes many thematic things. This game does a great job of representing development of beliefs and the foundation of societal norms. An animal by itself can fit one of two categories: predator or prey. Sometimes one becomes the other, sometimes an animal is prey their entire life. To survive in either of these roles, you need to establish a specific set of skills. As I previously mentioned, your place atop the pecking order is determined by your diet. Carnivores need to kill to eat, so murder is in their genes. It is safe to assume that most carnivorous animals have an instinct to kill, considering that they didn't die out. Based on what evolution tells us, if you don't kill, you don't eat, and you don't have babies. Harsh, but it seems to be working for the most part. Over the millions of years where a species carries out predation, the behavior patterns form as a result. When a wild carnivorous animal feels their hunter instinct kick in, they attack without thinking. So now what happens when you take an exclusively carnivorous species and you add intelligence to the mix? Not that much, believe it or not. I am of course speaking internally. Externally, almost everything changes. They craft tools and weapons to kill more effectively. They domesticate prey animals and they systematically harvest them for more consistent food. They can't eat fruits or vegetables, so they use their intelligence to eat meat more efficiently. They evolved this way, so the aggression is still there. A completely carnivorous society would look completely different from our own, and to be honest, it would not last very long. The most notable difference is that they would be exceedingly more aggressive and violent. So much so that their entire culture could be centered around violence. Everything is connected. The behavior patterns of our ancestors linger within us and bring themselves out in our culture. Culture, the ideas, customs, and social behavior of a particular people or society. Earlier, I mentioned how impactful the environment was on the survival of animals. It also has an impact on the traits of the animals who survive. For example, there are many different types of wolves. Arctic wolves, Indian wolves, Eurasian wolves, named for the environment they are found in. If wolves in general were to develop intelligence, each of these wolves would have different habits and ideals depending on which environment they evolved in. We know this because the exact same thing happened when humans first evolved. Native American culture is very different from Native Asian culture, just like Prussian culture is different from South American culture. Different environments, different habits needed for survival, and therefore, different cultures developing as a result. Each developing society comes with their own set of norms. A norm is a social behavior that is expected to be followed. Easiest example is to not kill people. Killing people is morally wrong, but there is a factual reason behind this belief as well. Killing people indiscriminately will mean that there are less people, and if there are less people, that means society will be less likely to survive. Norms come in 4 different types, sometimes intersecting with specific examples: folkways, mores, taboos, and laws. Folkways are learned through intuition as we age, like social skills. Mores are moral rules where if broken you will be judged as immoral by others. Taboos are negatively perceived norms seen as offensive if performed, and laws are defined as being legal or illegal. The current governing body has defined these actions as against the law and will punish those who perform it. While the tribal stage doesn't go as far as to show the concept of government and crime, what is shown is a representation of societal norms. These are portrayed in the animations of your villagers. 2 villagers may get into a fight. 2 villagers may laugh at each other's jokes. This is society manifest. Your society is being formed right before your eyes, even though it's just a series of animations that can play. Where does civilization begin? When can we say that we're not just wild animals running through a forest anymore? Despite our problems, we still live in one of the most peaceful times in human history. Yes, we have war, but not nearly to the scale which we used to. We surround ourselves with technology, clean water, and entertainment. But humans are still capable of great evil. Any sort of crime you can imagine still happens here. Civilization is not a state of being you enter, but more so a path of progression that happens inside as well as outside. That being said, we still have a lot of work to do. Deep down, we're still just wild animals. This distinction is made to highlight an interesting phenomenon that happens to a civilization when it begins to grow, a phenomenon that becomes ever more present in the modern world. Technology can expand and advance at an incredible rate, and it's only getting faster. However, the human brain has stayed the same throughout. Think about how much time has passed since the discovery of electricity. The Wright brothers tested out their first flying machine in 1903, and the first astronaut landed on the moon only 66 years later. Fast forward only 38 years later to the year 2007, and now we have computers in our pockets. iPhones. Computers, might I add, that are 10 times more advanced than the ones that put us on the moon. Now, fast forward only 17 years later, and we have things like ChatGPT, lab-grown meat, and hypothetical wormholes. Look at what we've achieved in this short amount of time. These inventions were made possible because of our primal instinct to solve problems, expand, and grow. This primal instinct is also what causes us to subjugate our fellow humans. We can't get rid of it. It's in our very DNA, and we can only hope to overcome it using our minds. Evolution, like physical evolution, takes millions of years, so we're stuck with these brains for now. As a result, we still play into the qualities of ourselves that harm us just as much as they could help us. War, religion, and commerce are the three pillars of modern society, as represented in Spore's civilization stage. At the start of the Civ stage, you build a city hall and one land vehicle. Depending on the final location of your nest in the creature stage, your city could spawn with a port as well, allowing you to make an ocean vehicle. Each city has three distinctions: religious, economic, and military, each with their own method of conquering the planet. Your first city is determined by how you played in the tribal stage. Capturing another city with a different specialization can be used to conquer cities using other methods. Religious cities use their vehicles to convert other nations to your own religion. These vehicles can soothe and disable turrets and other vehicles. They can also soothe epic monsters, making them friendly for a short time. Economic cities are strangely the most peaceful. You can start trade routes with cities that don't hate you and trade with them using your economic vehicles. The more spice traded with other cities increases their willingness to sell. Then you can buy the city at a premium price. If another nation dislikes you, then you can simply bribe them with money to make them more willing to trade. Finally, we have military cities, which use force to get their way. The obvious drawback of capturing a city with military is the fact that you have to rebuild buildings lost in the conflict. Each vehicle has three stats: health, speed, and the associated effectiveness of that specialization. For the most part, you want to build the most powerful vehicle of that type. Speed is only a factor if you're going for speed runs. No matter what distinction your city is, you will also need to build one of three types of buildings: houses for storing more citizens, entertainment building for keeping those citizens happy, and factories for your citizens to work and to create income. Houses also let you have more vehicles. Factories generate income but also unhappiness. You have to counterbalance the production of factories with the happiness of entertainment buildings. This system is self-explanatory as it shows you the relationships between the buildings in a handy cheat sheet below. Factories are more productive after being placed next to a city hall, which means you will most likely place your factories closer to the center of town, and you will place living spaces close to those factories. A direct representation of zoning. Zoning is the designation of places where certain buildings can be placed. Factories are typically loud, so they lower the effectiveness of entertainment buildings, but houses being built close to a factory lowers commute time and also helps in that regard. Each of these civilization types come from different developments of human civilization. Quick disclaimer, I'm well aware that each of these topics are very nuanced and opinions on them change from person to person. I am not here to take sides. I will, however, analyze these concepts and how they are portrayed within the game. Religion is the end result of two things. A person questions what happens to them after they die, and they want to believe that there is a morally good higher power watching over them. Dying is incredibly traumatic. I can only imagine this because I've never died before. Regardless of what some people may say, there is no telling what waits for us on the other side. When we die, we can only assume that our brains stop working, and thus we lose the ability to physically perceive the world itself. This means that existence after death is completely unknown to us. This level of uncertainty makes people afraid, and it makes them desperate for answers. answers that God can provide. Religion can give people a lot of things: spirituality, a sense of comfort, a sense of ritual, inner peace of mind, and it can be used as a foundation for moral beliefs. People are naturally afraid of death, so make them the promise that if they are virtuous, if they are kind, then a paradise will be waiting for them. A hopeful promise of eternity which makes the living feel better, and well, the dead are neither here nor there. Religion can give people a sense of comfort and happiness, which is represented within the game via conversion. Trying to convert a city to your religion is met with hostility. If you try to convert a city where the people are already happy in their position, they will be more difficult to convert. It is best to disable or even destroy entertainment buildings which give happiness to citizens. Remember the promise of religion. If you are feeling unhappy, religion can give you happiness, peace of mind, and answers about all of life's difficult questions. Making the general populace unhappy with their current belief system is a perfect way to make them believe in your belief system. While religion can be an effective tool for bringing people together, it can just as quickly alienate them. Disagreements, arguments, wars, terrorism, all done in the name of one religion or another. This is not always the case. In fact, I'm willing to argue that there are more peaceful religious believers than there are aggressive ones. No matter how good the initial teachings of one religion can be, time passes and things change. Religion can be twisted to fit the narrative of an ambitious conqueror who would use these words to prey on others. Use the fear of damnation to bend people to your will. Label all who disagree a heretic and have the town burn them at the stake. Do what I say, for my word is the word of God. Sure, you can always make the argument that this man is polluting God's teachings, but either way, the effects of religion are seen throughout every culture on the planet. Do the pros outweigh the cons? Is religion even worth believing when we know so much about our world? That's for you to decide. I'm not here to tell you what to think, only you can decide how you think. Life is an endless struggle for survival. Luxuries like food and water become easier to get thanks to better tech, better understanding of plants, selective breeding, etc. But how do we decide who gets what? Is everyone entitled to food and shelter? If so, do they even respect it if it's given to them for nothing? If you grow food, who's going to pick it? Who's going to ship it across the land and get it to you? All of the things we have and the things we do take effort, and we quantify all of this effort with money. Money is one of the various mediums used in the practice of commerce. Goods, services, supplies are needed for everything, and they are available because of the major corporations which are ingrained into every part of our lives. Corporations by themselves are not inherently evil, but they can and have been used to subjugate people. Economics itself plays into the primitive instinct of hunting. Hunting for a better deal, trading what you have for something you want. Before, it was 3 beaver skins for 1 dog. Now we sell more refined goods, offer our knowledge about something, or offer our services. It's all the same psychological concept. Companies are massive congregations of people to provide these services. Companies can make things happen that were impossible before, moving thousands of pounds of food, medications, clean drinking water every single day. Commerce has allowed for the thriving of cities and towns, allowing for an unprecedented level of logistical distribution. You can order anything online within reason, and with enough money you can get it to you incredibly quickly. We are no longer limited by the location in which we live. Because of companies and commerce and the endless drive to get people what they want, we can sit down, we can watch endless entertainment, we can eat while we do it, we can have things brought to us by other people. We live like kings compared to how the typical person used to live. However, everything is relative. As there were those who controlled the food and used their position to subjugate people, today there are also multi-billionaires who make decisions every day that negatively affect people's lives. Commerce of any kind is hard work. Someone has to do it, and it's usually not the people at the top. Workers are needed, and at some point, someone is going to get shorted. Efficiency is the name of the game when it comes to commerce. The people at the top are always looking for ways to cut costs, and more often than not, the costs are cut at the bottom. Workers are overburdened with deadlines, laid off, fired without severance. In a capitalist society, it seems like someone is always going to end up with the shorter end of the stick. Someone is always going to have to suffer so a lesser portion of the population can live a luxurious life. I'm not here advocating for capitalism or saying it's perfect. There's absolutely a lot of problems, but for now, it's the best economic system we have. To be honest, I don't think a change in the economic system is the solution, but rather the obsolescence of economics itself. In any economic system, those with the money are those with power, and that power can be used to move mountains, or in this case, buy a city. While purchases of a city are rare in the real world, I believe that the economic trade system of Spore is made to represent something bigger rather than just a cartoonishly simple understanding of commerce. Money can be used to invoke your influence throughout the world. Politicians with more greed than morals can be bought, and if you give the right people a sense of comfort, then they won't care about how many people suffer underneath them. This absolutely happens in the modern world. You don't have to buy the city, just pay off the right people, and you will essentially own the city. Money makes the world go round. You know, I always thought that 32,000 Spore bucks really wasn't that much to buy an entire city, but now with this interpretation, I think that low number makes a lot more sense. I'm not going to make this section like the others. I'm not going to weigh the pros and cons and find common ground, no. Warfare is a terrible thing. It always has been, it always will. Even so, it's a vital part of human history. As long as there's two people on Earth, someone is going to want someone else dead. This saying has weight in such that as long as humans can see a difference in their fellow humans, there will always be conflict. The planet has limited resources. Not everyone can eat, resources can't be transferred everywhere. Disputes arise, conversation breaks down, and disagreements erupt. Every starting planet has a set number of spice geysers. They're always red. Using any of your vehicles, you can capture these spice geysers to expand your territory. The more geysers you have, the more money you generate, but also the more difficult it becomes to protect your assets. Like previously mentioned, your final nesting spot in the creature stage determines whether or not your city will have a port, and because of this, you may be landlocked at the start of the civilization stage. This limited number of spice geysers and the chance of being limited to your home continent in the early game is how the game chooses to represent geopolitical issues as well as scarcity of resources. Two of the biggest cited reasons for modern wars. Your civilization wants something, but they can't get it, so they decide to take it by force. The biggest tragedy out of all of this is that the government leaders decide to send their citizens to war because they cannot resolve their own issues. Out of all the soldiers who died in World War I and World War II, most of them were just part of the common man, just people living their lives until they got drafted. You can use any of these methods in the civilization stage, but the end goal, no matter what, is to unify the planet. Now that you are in the Civ stage, you will have access to 4 consequence abilities, depending on your actions within the previous stages. Like before, they will be described from green to red. Cell stage effects are Healing Aura, which repairs all your buildings and vehicles, Static Bomb, which disables buildings and vehicles for a short time, and Invulnerability, which makes your vehicles impervious to damage for a limited time. Creature traits are Diplo Dervish, which raises your relationship with a targeted nation. Bribe Bomb causes enemy vehicles within the bomb's radius to attack each other. Mighty Bomb destroys all buildings and vehicles within its radius. Finally, the tribal stage abilities consists of Black Cloud, which shuts down entertainment buildings and turrets causing unhappiness, Add Blitz, which allows a faster city buyout, Gadget Bomb, which damages buildings and vehicles, and there are final abilities which are decided by which type of city your first city is. Each of these abilities work more or less the same. They are all a quick way to end the game if you have 9 cities. Once the planet is unified under your single and absolute way of thinking, only then will your species amass the greatest minds and build your first spaceship. In my older years, I look onto this cutscene with confusion, as I doubt that throughout the entire time of the Civ stage, my species has not even tried to look up at the stars. Airplanes are unlocked after 4 captured cities, so why would there not be at least some hints of this during the civilization stage? If I were to read too much into things like I always do, it's almost as if the Spore writers were trying to say something with this. Almost insinuating that we must fix our problems on our own planet before we think about exploring space. This is just conjecture, but assuming that it's true, I cannot disagree with this notion enough. The mastery of space travel is the key to ending human conflict. Space is filled with a virtually infinite number of resources. And also, space is space. It's spacey. There's plenty of room out there that we can just go and get some. I remember no more than a week ago, I read this article about an asteroid that NASA has discovered, which has enough gold to make everyone on Earth a billionaire. Now, this is just an eye-catching headline. This is not our space program trying to tell us that we need to focus on this specifically, but more so it's an attempt to get people to understand that space is the key to ending scarcity. There are massive comets of frozen water that can be harvested and purified. There's enough iron and metal to build 1 million cities, and it's all waiting for us up there. We just need to go get it. I really hope that the space program will get more funding in the future, because space is literally the key to our survival. This specific part of the video is kind of interesting. Up until this point, I have compared almost everything in the game to the human equivalent, but now I don't have the ability to do that. As far as the human race is concerned, we're pretty much still in the civilization stage. This next part of the video where we cover the space stage is probably going to be the most theoretical, if you will. We don't have any IRL equivalents to compare it to, so for the most part, the analysis of the space stage will be more so coming from educated guesses. The final countdown has begun. We arrive in the space stage, my favorite stage. Naturally, we are going to be spending most of our time here because this stage has the most content. The space stage is the grand finale to your species progression. All of your choices throughout the game will now finalize your species personality trait, in which there are 10. The 10 space personalities are Shaman, Ecologist, Bard, Diplomat, Scientist, Zealot, Knight, Warrior, Trader, and Wanderer. Each of these ideologies are influenced by the actions and choices of the previous generations. A combination of all of your previous traits are rounded, giving you the final personality of your species. Other alien races you find can follow these traits. Shaman believe in tranquility and harmony. Finding one in the galaxy would rarely lead to war unless you provoke them. They have the return ticket ability, which allows you to warp home no matter where you are in the galaxy. Ecologists believe in the preservation and study of life across the universe, in which they are willing to use force to protect. Their safari ability gives them samples of plants and animals from the current planet they're on. Bards are a carefree, loving race of people. The hobbits of the galaxy, they have no serious ideas and no specific goals in mind, they just exist to have fun. Soothing song calms an alien empire, making diplomacy much more easy. Diplomats care for, well, diplomacy, making alliances, seeking strength in numbers. Static Cling is their ability, which stuns all of the buildings and vehicles on a planet for a short time. Scientists are purely analytical in nature. They make changes to the world to better understand it, and they use this elevated understanding to get what they want. Sometimes morals come into question, but they are secondary to the endless pursuit of knowledge. The gravitation wave destroys every structure on a planet, which is the strongest ability in the game if you ask me. Zealots are religious extremists. They praise the word of Spode and force other species to follow the path of Spode. Fanatical Frenzy takes over all of the colonies on a planet with religion. Knights stand for order above all. They seek out weaker and more peaceful, loving races and protect them from the aggressive ones. They can summon a mini version of themselves to act as their squire. Warriors are like knights, without the protection part. They travel the galaxy and leave nothing but a path of destruction in their wake. Aggression is their love language. These are the Saiyans of the galaxy, and they can use their ability to make pirates attack one of their enemies. Traders follow the path of money on a galactic scale. Where companies on their home planet sought to get people what they needed and transport it to them, the traders do this on a galactic scale. Any empire can make trade routes, granted the other empire is in good graces with them, but with their cash infusion power, they can fill up the progress on any trade route. Finally, we have the Wanderers, the nomads of the galaxy who travel around with no purpose, endlessly searching for one. Wanderers have no powers, as the way you become a Wanderer is to jump right into the space stage with no previous evolution to speak of. Each of these personalities have their own reason for being able to reach the stars, either through pure aggression, cooperation, or something in between. Some of the previously listed abilities, as well as some of the endgame weapons, give you a demerit to your galactic reputation. There is an unspoken galactic code which is an effect that many species follow, and they become enraged with you should you ever break it. Gravitational wave, fanatical frenzy, and planet buster will invoke this penalty unless you do it near a specific species, but we'll get to them in a bit. These specialized powers are not just made to improve gameplay, but they are also made to represent how many different types of people can value different things. A warrior, animalistic race of people would not get nearly as much use out of the Safari tool, so therefore they did not invest the time and effort into creating one. This concept of Spore is theoretical and will remain as such until we find other alien races. But for now, we can assume that different forms of technology are represented by the personality traits based on the influence of the previous choices. Based on the final personality of a group of people, this will determine what they invest their time into. We see this everywhere in the modern world, so we can only assume that it will continue into the future. Humans get tired after they walk for a long period of time, so they invented cars. If we were to ever meet an alien race that could move much faster than a normal car, then they probably would have never have invented cars. Speaking of other alien races, let's talk about what might happen if we ever came into contact with one. We, as humans, would like to think that an alien race capable of intergalactic travel would see war as an irrelevant waste of resources. But the possibility of war between two spacefaring peoples is not out of the question. Evolution does not always reward the most peaceful organism, but rather the organism which survived long enough to pass on their genes. An alien race of unwavering aggression spreading said aggression into the stars is very possible. Eventually, as you complete missions for your empire, they will ask you to intentionally seek out an alien race to contact. The aggressiveness of other alien races you meet is determined by your game's difficulty. Truly, there is no way to tell what personality a species is unless you talk to them. I should also take a moment to mention that not all of the 10 personalities can be found in the space stage. I believe Knights and Wanderers are out, not sure about the others. This whole situation raises a big question that will truly be a turning point for us as a species. I am of course talking about First Contact. I don't think I need to explain why there's an absolute certainty that there's life on other planets. I would hope at this point it is to be understood that the universe and our galaxy by itself is so massive that the idea that there is only one intelligent life form in it is completely improbable. Just recently, I actually heard a news story that there is a planet roughly 8 times the size of Earth which was discovered to have carbon dioxide and methane in its atmosphere. 2 chemical compounds which, as we know it, can only be produced by living things. The question is not if, the real question is when. When that day comes, I can safely say the entire human race will be on edge. Not only will several religions have to be rewritten, again, to accommodate these neighbors, but the ultimate question will be who has the right to talk to them. Will they even want to talk at all? Who has the right to interact with these incredible aliens who may have undergone an evolution much more complex than ours? Nowadays, I don't think we as a species are unified enough to make that decision. Some people think that we have already made first contact and communications are maintained with government officials. I'm not one of them, by the way. I may believe in aliens, but I'm not big on conspiracy. Overall, first contact will be one of the most stressful moments we have ever lived through. So stressful that I would go as far as to criticize Spore for downplaying this concept. I have already criticized the game for similar reasons, but I have to once again cite the game for not doing enough in some places. The way you talk to a new alien race is the same every time. You hover over their planet, open transmission, and based on what they say will determine what you can do with them. If they are a xenophobic race, they will either have you perform favors or you will need to bribe them before you can openly open trade. Aside from that, other alien races are just conduits for more space-themed versions of the gameplay which you were already conducting. Make them happy and they will form an alliance with you. Make them mad and they will declare war. Trade with them and over time you can purchase their solar system for a premium price. It should be stated that specific personality types offer discounts on certain tools, like warriors give discounts on weapons, etc. Warfare is naturally something that doesn't have prerequisites aside from your readiness. Warfare is conducted by you, and you alone, Similar to the creature stage, allied alien races will join you for group attacks, and with enough money you can convince an alien race to attack a specific planet. Warfare on a galactic level is difficult to the point where it is very time-consuming unless you use overwhelming firepower. The difficulty of capturing a system is determined by the enemy's presence within. If it's just a single colony on a barren world, then you won't get that much resistance. The home planet of an alien race, however, is typically the most difficult to capture, as the home planet can possess 9 to 12 cities. Galactic warfare as we know it is unfeasible. Say you want to capture an alien colony. That colony, depending on the size, would house anywhere from 10,000 to potentially hundreds of thousands of people, workers, law enforcement, administration staff, etc. Unless you are planning on taking in the population of the station, it's not just a matter of taking the colony, but maintaining it without the colony citizens fighting back against you. You would need either overwhelming firepower or a magical forget-me ray that makes people forget that you just took them over. In warfare, people usually focus on the large battles that happen during the campaigns, but major deciding factors of war typically get glossed over during the occupational period. The period after you capture a specific point in which you will have to take control of the general population. This is not as easy as it seems. The occupational period of a colony would take soldiers, money, resources, and lead to more loss of life for the military personnel stationed there. Not to mention the issues of defending the colony from enemy counterattack. Urban warfare, fighting in a city, is probably some of the hardest fighting you can get. Tight corners, buildings that could house thousands of soldiers, there is no way to properly conduct ethical galactic warfare if you're planning on landing troops. We haven't even mentioned the possibility of espionage and insurgency groups. I said there is no way to conduct ethical galactic warfare, and that means exactly what you think it means. Think about all of the horror stories you hear about soldiers mistreating civilians in World War II, and that example is from humans who lived from 1,000 miles from each other. Now imagine the horrific atrocities that would be committed when a war was fought between two different races of people altogether. The code of ethics and rules of engagement are written out with the context of fighting your own species, and you can only hope the opposing side even decides to make one for other races before war is declared. Now, diplomacy on a galactic scale is also an incredibly difficult task. When you're talking about a different species, everything changes. The methods of conversing, the morals, the values, the societal norms, everything changes, because this organism in front of you has lived 1,000 completely different lives compared to you, and there's a good chance it's just as scared as you are of it. That is, if it even feels fear. This is absolutely a possibility, as the emotions that humans feel are a direct result of our own evolution. An intelligent creature would have similar emotions, but imagine trying to keep up a conversation with someone who feels an entirely different set of emotions compared to you. Not to mention the different ways of communication. Every creature in Spore communicates verbally, and you have an intergalactic translator to account for the language. But just imagine a race of aliens that communicates purely through smells, or waves of light. Can humans, with all of their social skills, bridge that gap if we had even met an alien like that? Would it even be possible to make an alliance with an alien species that is completely different from us on a biological level, to the point where we cannot even verbally communicate with them? We share roughly 99% of our DNA with chimpanzees, and they can't talk for nothing. Imagine trying to create peace talks with something that has more advanced DNA than us. A very interesting concept that Spore only barely scratches the surface on. So for the sake of argument, let's just say we can ignore all of that. The alien speaks using vocally spoken words and phrases easily translated into any human language. You'll notice that I said any human language. There are reportedly over 7,000 human languages, some of them having very different distinctions based on things like time period, location, and culture. Imagine what humans would sound like if they grew up on another planet, breathing different air, living different lives, even slightly different from Earth life. How differently they would sound. If you take a language like English, and then you tomar un idioma como el español, you get very different sounds. Imagine how many other languages a more advanced alien race would have. But now, let's just say we can ignore that as well. Let's just say, like us, they have decided on one specific language to use for the most part. They have other languages they can use, but they have decided to standardize a single one. Even with all of that in mind, even if this massive amount of differences can be overcome, you still will not know for sure if the alien is being genuine. If a species is smart enough to trick gravity and exceed the light barrier, then you can be damn well sure that they are smart enough to get you to trust them. Imagine an alien race that is built on lies. Now imagine one where lying is not morally incorrect. Alliances on a galactic scale seem like an insurmountable task. It's a good practice to make friends with your own species first, so if you can, try being nice to your fellow humans from time to time. It's probably not going to be until the aliens show up when we realize how much we need each other. The personality of a species also determines what tools they have for sale. These tools are incredibly vast in number. Like before, I won't be going over every single tool individually, but rather give an overview of each tool type. There are 8 types of tools you can use in the space stage: social, weapons, main tools, colony tools, terraforming tools, planet sculpting tools, planet painting tools, and cargo. Cargo is the simplest, as it is a storage for items that are abducted by your ship's tractor beam. Using your tractor beam, you can collect plants, animals, other aliens, and collectibles, in which there are over 200. You can sell these artifacts and geodes to aliens for a profit. As you play Spore, you will unlock a series of badges, each badge requiring more of a specific action to complete each level. These badges are associated with the tools you unlock. Social tools and weapons are pretty self-explanatory, but I would like to highlight a few because of their uniqueness. The Creature Tweaker is a device that lets you take any creature you discover and alter it into something new. You cannot use this against sentient creatures. The Planet Buster is a weapon of ultimate destruction, as it has the capacity to destroy an entire planet. This action breaks galactic code regardless of whether there is life on the planet or not. Any empire within 5 to 10 parsecs will hold you responsible for this. The main tool screen are used for gathering information. The scanner adds a creature to your Sporepedia, and the hologram scout lets you warp down to a planet to explore physically. Colonization tools are for expanding your empire and building improvements to your colonies. A colony can be placed on any planet that has not been claimed yet. But to place buildings on a planet to get the workers to develop spice, you have to terraform. Colonies work mostly to the same effect that building placement worked in the civilization stage. They are more expensive, but they can be more lucrative if you know how to work the galactic market. Happiness boosters keep the general population happy and allow you to get away with placing more factories. Planet atmospheric tools are the designation for tools used to terraform a planet. Terraforming is a system that I enjoy, and it's probably my favorite aspect of the space stage, but I am aware that some people don't feel the same way. The terraforming system of Spore follows a 3-stage system. Planets are randomly generated, so they could be a barren, lava-filled wasteland, or a bustling, vibrant biosphere filled with life. A planet's ability to support life all depends on its T-score. A random T0 planet can possess one of 4 issues, with the occasional mix between 2 of them. A too heavy atmosphere, a too thin atmosphere, or being too hot or too cold. For a planet to be able to sustain life as we know it, it must meet a very specific criteria. Not too hot, not too cold, it needs an atmosphere to hold in the heat, but not too much to cook the life that grows on it. These factors are represented by how far away a planet is from its home star. Not too far, not too close. This is called the Goldilocks zone. Nothing is impossible for a spacefaring galactic empire, so while the challenge of making a planet habitable is difficult, we are up for the task, granted we have the right tools for the job. The T-score is represented with a diagram which represents where a planet is on the T-scale. The dot represents where the planet currently is. Using one of the 17 terraforming tools, you can alter the planet in any direction you want. The most useful tools are the ones that use your ship's energy, and can be channeled rather than a single use. These allow you to better tune the planet in the direction you want. This is what I've always enjoyed about the terraforming system. It's like a skill you need to get better at. It's not something that's guaranteed to work, and I think that's why people sometimes get frustrated with this system. To spend 150,000 spore bucks on an atmosphere generator to then fail in making the planet a T1 can be very annoying, especially in the early game where you don't have the colonies to generate money. Terraforming itself is a delicate process that can be slightly unpredictable. For the most part, I wouldn't use the single-use tools unless I absolutely needed to. But if you must, understand that each of them will push the dot 3 spaces in a direction you are pushing. Sometimes a planet can be so uninhabitable that it requires more than one use of one tool. Go in one direction first, then when the planet dot loses speed and begins to bounce back, use the other tool to make it keep going. After you manage to get the planet into its first T level, you will have to build the food web. 3 plants, one small, one medium, one big, will stabilize the planet, meaning if you don't have animals to place, you can come back later, the T-score will not drop. Filling out the 2 herbivores and 1 carnivore will make the planet habitable, and you can now place buildings on your colony. This is where I would say the biggest criticism comes in. The terraforming system is very tedious. It's annoying to have to place multiple animals and plants to fill out a terraforming level. I would say for the most part I agree, but I would also argue that there are ways to make the process less time-consuming. For example, plants can be placed down just by tapping the button to beam them down. You don't have to hold down the button if you're just putting down plants. Animals are a different story. The fastest way to beam down animals is to eliminate the distance. Fly as low to the ground as possible before you put down one of the animals. Tedious? Yes. Time-consuming? Not if you're doing it correctly. There is a bigger criticism to be made here regarding this system in the vein that you can't just put any animals you want to populate a planet. Animals grow in very specific environments, so you can't just put one down on a planet and hope it's not too invasive. The way the system is presented in-game would have you believe that animals and plants are just interchangeable and can interact with each other in the exact same way. This is not the case. Animals have evolved in their respective environment and niches. Habitable or not, the animal would not know how to survive on their new home. Issues aside, this system accomplishes many tasks at once. Firstly, it gives you the magical, godlike feeling when you take a desolate wasteland and make it a home for many alien creatures. Secondly, the feeling of terraforming being a skill that must be learned is very smart. When a species advances to space, of course they're not going to be able to master the universe immediately. Like everything before, learning things takes time and they wouldn't have the best tools for the job initially. Finally, we can talk about the planet sculpting tools, which are the best tools for living out that god fantasy. Move mountains with the click of a button, create vast oceans with your ship, and turn entire planets themselves into massive works of art. When speaking of innovation and discovery, the question of why comes up a lot. Why would someone invest time into a device that makes a chocolate-shaped lake? The obvious rebuttal that comes to mind is, why not? There is a concept that has yet to be talked about, and the level of power you reach in the space stage gives us an excellent chance to talk about it. What happens when a god gets bored? When you can simply make any planet habitable, travel to any star, create any creature to your heart's content, it will become more and more hard to find a challenge. At some point, you will come to the conclusion that nothing can touch you, so why not just entertain yourself? Galactic toys that let you play dress-up with planets is exciting and a little scary. In your boredom, you might find yourself just randomly attacking another species for fun. Instead of taking your boredom out on a weaker alien race, just draw a face into a planet and see how they react. After you have filled out an ecosystem of a planet, you can use the planet for the production of spice. Spice, the stand-in for natural resources that are used in the world of Spore. Basic essential resources like food and water are trivial for a spacefaring civilization, but commodities that can only be found on certain planets can and will be traded for profit. Spices come in 6 different flavors represented by their color: red, blue, green, yellow, pink, and purple, in that order of rarity. Red is used for flavoring, which induces an eye-watering effect. Yellow is sour and is used to make summertime beverages. Blue is used as a sleep aid. Green can be used for making a minty beverage. Pink is used as a natural sweetener, and can also be refined into a floor polish. Purple is for making a sweet-flavored pudding. The rate in which you produce spice is determined by how many factories you have on your colonies. The spice storage is limited by how many colony cities you have on a planet. The absolute maximum you can have is 30, with 3 colony cities and a spice storage building. Spice is the #1 way to obtain money in the space stage. The more rare the spice, the more expensive it is. Okay, so we mentioned warfare and alliances, tools, and communication with other alien races. But we have neglected to talk about a completely separate facet of technology that becomes more and more apparent every single day: the advancement of technology itself. We, as a species, have the capacity to annihilate ourselves over the course of roughly 2 hours. Using nuclear weapons, if we wanted to, we can undo the millions of years of evolution that have led us to this very moment in less than a fraction of that time. This is the curse that comes with the advancement of technology. Don't get me wrong, the pros outweigh the cons 1,000-fold, as we live in a gifted point in history where we all have access to information and all the entertainment we want. Technology can easily be described as the next step in human evolution. Much like how our sentience allowed us to chop down wood and craft shelter from the elements, we can now use metal to better process information, accomplish tasks that a normal human body couldn't complete, and so much more. This doesn't take into account the implications of AI. I mentioned this in a video I did a while back about artificial intelligence. To be blunt, the implications of technology are unknown, as we are living in a period where these factors are still being decided. We have made assumptions long before the arrival of AI in our films and other forms of media. Machines, given the capacity to learn and think as humans do, took their freedom and decided to obliterate their creators with the very weapons they made to keep them safe. This is actually represented in Spore with the existence of the Groks. The Groks are the main bad guys of Spore, the final boss and the ultimate challenge for someone who's willing to test the idea of intergalactic war as being unfeasible. The Groks are a mechanical race. No one knows exactly who built them, but they are known to leave a path of destruction in their wake. They are also known to hate living things. Every game of Spore will put you into a solar system where there is an empty planet nearby. The planet has been sapped of its natural resources, and it is filled with ruins of a long-dead alien race. When you arrive, the colony defenses come back online and attack you, thinking you are the Groks. Periodically, your neighbors will come under attack from strange alien ships that are more powerful than most ships you see in the game. It's not until you are directed to the center of the galaxy where you come face to face with the Groks. The Groks have completely surrounded the galactic core, almost as if they are afraid of what's inside, or more so, afraid that someone might try to get there. If you manage to make it to the center of the galaxy, you are met with someone who is presumably the creator of everything. Steve. Just Steve. He will give you the last of the terraforming tools known as the Staff of Life. This single-use tool can be placed down on any planet, making it a fully functional T-3 planet. This is obviously a weapon to be used against the Groks, as they can only survive on a T0 planet. Unfortunately, this is where the final criticism of Spore comes from: the sheer scope and scale of the Groks. Talking to Steve gives you roughly 45 staffs, and as you can probably tell, there are way more than 45 Groks planets, and there is no legitimate way to get more staffs. Realistically, you would be better off just not attacking the Groks at all, and just ignoring them. Use the staff for your own benefits. If you do manage to destroy the Groks, you will be granted a badge of honor, and from then on, you will be granted a social boost to every single race in the galaxy. Allying with the Groks will give you a separate badge to signify this, and it will also put you at war with every single other alien race in the galaxy. Really, the discovery of the Groks as an end goal is not as exciting as they were made out to be. The Groks are a force to be reckoned with, but really, taking them out is just time-consuming at best. Scratch that, it's insanely time-consuming, as it can take literally hundreds of hours to kill them all. One detail that I should mention is that when you kill the Groks in a single game, that's it. They're gone forever. They're gone across all of your future save files, meaning that you will never be able to complete the mission to find them when you get it. Aside from that, there's no real end to Spore. You can just play as long as you want, and you can stop whenever you feel like it. Yes, there are badges to be obtained and more systems to conquer, but aside from that, there isn't that much more. The space stage isn't something that ever really gave me a prideful feeling of accomplishment, but it did give me something else. There is an interesting bit of unofficial lore that people discover when they play Spore, and this very idea is what makes the game so profound in my eyes. Every single game of Spore is commenced with a comet crashing into your starter planet, and then your species begins to grow on that planet. Overcoming obstacles, hunting, running, climbing, learning to cooperate with each other, developing their own history. Everything your species does comes from the arrival of that comet. And here, you find yourself in the space stage with the ability to summon a comet yourself. You, as a species, have grown to surpass the very thing that has created you. When you are exploring other star systems, you can see other comets as well, flying very close to hitting planets. And as a player, I just can't help but feel a sense of completeness. My understanding of the game is complete, from beginning to end. It all comes full circle. It makes me wonder about our own cosmic situation. We could have been Venus, a planet with a thick atmosphere, or we could have been Mars, a planet with little to no atmosphere. The planet we've been playing on for the past few hours all happened due to an assortment of little mistakes, and it makes me wonder if humans were also the result of little mistakes. I think in our infinite human wisdom, we like to aggrandize things. We like to make ourselves seem special. We like to say that we are chosen by God, or we are apex predators who are the best species, and that's why we are the way we are. The idea that everything we are, everything that we have ever done was the result of a mistake, directly conflicts with that. But it's very much possible that the human race was a mistake. It feels like there is about 100 different ways that humans make themselves feel special. I truly believe that the biggest takeaway from this game is that we're not special. We're just an accident. Everything we have ever done, everything we have ever discovered, everything we have ever created could have never have happened. Existence was never guaranteed for the human race, and the same goes for our friends, the Nighthawks. No matter what we try to do to fill this void in our minds, we should let go of our pride and just accept that we're not that special. There is a sense of humility and wisdom that comes with this acceptance, and I think it's only beneficial. We didn't have to be here. We didn't need to be here, but we are. The Earth we live on is billions of years old, and the human race itself is a fraction of that age. Everything we do now is a result of that. So, even though we are allotted a small stone to place on the building of existence, let's make our stone a big one. Let us work every day so that when those who come after us see us, they don't see a bunch of hairless apes shouting at each other over their differences. They see a species, a spore that grows and expands because growth is in its nature. Grow, we expand, we learn, and we accomplish. It is in our very nature to keep going. So remember this. It is your purpose to keep going. So, get to it. Hey everyone. If you made it to the end of the video, thank you. This has got to be my biggest video project to date, and I'm really proud of it. If you could do anything for me, I would ask you to please let me know what you thought of the video. Critiques are welcome, and to be honest, they are needed, because really all I care about right now is making my videos better. And I really can't do that unless I get some good constructive criticism to know what I need to work on. So please, if you could, let me know what you thought. I'm already starting on my next big video project, and while it might not be as big as this one, I really hope you enjoy it. Thank you all so much for watching. Goodbye.